All right. I'm live, she says. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS office hours. Let me just check that people can hear and see me. But I'm starting to get more confident that I'm able to click the right buttons to get it going. Yeah, sounds like people are picking me up. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so got a couple of fixes for the streaming setup today, which are nice. I finally got a proper power supply for my camera. I was using a battery the whole time before, but finally found a power supply that works, so I don't have to keep recharging. Very interesting, I know. Anyway, welcome back to SerenityOS office hours. It is Friday and 4 p.m. Swedish time, so we're going to do what we always do and talk about SerenityOS. So if you have questions or anything you would like to talk about related to SerenityOS or programming, I suppose, then please, bring it up and we'll talk about it. I have been continuing to work on Discord support, as you know, if you were following the YouTube channel, and it's a lot of fun, but tons of stuff happening in parallel, of course, since I'm not the only person working on the system. And let's see, Paul Rat says, just finished my first automated IPv4 range block of 21 ranges from 122 IPv4 addresses. I have no idea what you mean by that, but congratulations on your first automated range block, I suppose. Yeah, Jordan, battery for the camera. It was the way that it came. It didn't come with a power supply, so it just came with a battery and a charger. And I'd been using it that way. I purchased a cheap power supply from a Chinese company, which turned out to not work out, but now I got an original part from Canon and it's working just fine. Anyways, so nice to see everybody here, and if nobody is going to bring anything up, I'm just going to take a look at where we are with Discord at the moment. So just earlier today, Ali was nice enough to fix the issue that we've been seeing with a request server using 100% CPU. It turned out to be a small bug in request server, and we were like not handling disconnected sockets properly, basically. So we had like a disconnected socket that was just sitting there and chewing the CPU. And now that we get rid of that, we actually stop burning. So this is the current state of the page, and I don't remember exactly what the state was a week ago, last time we were in office hours, but if there's anybody who only ever sees these updates on office hours, then yeah, so that's what I've been working on recently, is just getting Discord working in the Serenity browser. And there's a lot of little details to get right. Just yesterday, I was getting this checkbox to check, and it was quite a journey through React and whatnot. But we got it checking, as you can see. So looking forward to the next step here. Let's see. Magic Zero says, what are some of the biggest challenges you've had thus far? I think from my perspective, the big challenges are mostly social. Like the technical stuff, I don't feel is necessarily challenging as much as it is work. I tend to think of programming as work or like labor that has to be done, but as long as you are willing to put in the time, you can get it done. But the social stuff I find more challenging, like getting everybody to be on the same page sort of and pull the project in the same direction, and getting people to get along. You know, we have speaking of our Discord server, as you can see here, we have 5,330 people on there, and just getting everybody to coexist and collaborate productively, I find really challenging and really rewarding at the same time. Let's see, Linus says, can you give 2x scaling a try? Seems a bit laggy here, which sucks as I want to enable it when recording. I guess I can. Let me do that, and then I will catch up with the questions. Let's try 2x scaling. It's been a while since I did that. Seems perfectly fine here. I mean, this website is laggy because of the SVG rendering code is laggy, but it doesn't feel laggy otherwise to me. So maybe something is wrong on your side, Linus. Let's see. So Paul Rath says, hey Andreas, does the initial SerenityOS boot process depend on EFI/UEFI? No, it does not. We don't have any integration with EFI stuff at the moment. Diego says, hi Andreas, can Serenity boot to a TTY, and would it be possible to port existing Wayland compositors, for example Sway, to Serenity? Nothing against the Serenity GUI, just wonder if it would be possible. It can absolutely boot to a TTY. You can boot it in text mode, then you don't get the GUI. It's just one of our boot modes, and I think there might even be a help page about that. Here, yeah, under category 7, under boot parameters, there is supposed to be, is it called system mode maybe? System mode, yeah. So there's system mode, graphical, this is the default, but we also have text, which boots in text-only console mode. And if you wanted to port an existing Wayland compositor, I'm sure that anything is possible. It's not particularly interesting to me, but I'm sure you can do it if you try. Elite Roger says, hi brother, how does SerenityOS perform on real hardware, but also the emulators? Is it slow? How does the UI feel? So I haven't booted it on bare metal for quite a while, more than a year ago now for me, but I know other people do it regularly. And last time I was doing it, it felt perfectly fine. Not slow at all, no flickering, it was just very nice. Jeff Erickson says, quick question for a newbie to your channel. Is there any video or description of how you got started at the very, very beginning? The first few commits or first days? So there isn't really a video about the very first days. I guess the closest thing we have is maybe on the SerenityOS.org website. If you go and read, we have these happy birthday posts that I've been making on the project birthdays. So if you check out the first one, it describes a little bit about the very first days, what it looked like before it was even the Serenity operating system. So I would recommend checking the birthday posts if you haven't seen them. They're pretty, in my opinion, they're pretty fun posts. I have a little collection of fun stuff that happened during the year. So SerenityOS.org. Samuel says, any plans to plan out a plan for SerenityOS? Well, Samuel, I don't really have a plan, but I'll think about it. QB says, hey Andreas, hope you're having a great day. Just wanted to let you know your microphone is peaking sometimes. Oh my goodness. All right. That is good information. I should have read that earlier. Let me just take down the gain a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. All right. Hopefully it still sounds okay, but now I'm not peaking as much. We'll see. Too Many Dicks says, can we get a tour of your house/office? At 1 million subscribers, I will give a complete tour of my life. Peep Circus says, I see web support making great progress. How is PDF support at the moment? PDF support has not been worked on significantly since the initial implementation, as far as I know. There's been like scattered development, but I think we're basically in the, which one is it? We're basically in the same place we were when it first got done. And we got some like rotation features and things like that, but no huge improvements to format support. And it's definitely an area where you could make a large impact if you wanted to work on it. And I'm sure that the original author for sure can help you get started, but I think the work should be pretty straightforward given that it's a well understood format with many implementations. Chris Carlos says, any plans to build SerenityOS for ARM64? This OS could be very useful on single board computers or even on M1 Macs with virtualization. There are no plans for anything in particular in this project. I don't have a plan, and I don't impose a plan on other people, so that is the answer to that question. Now, there is an AR64 or ARM64 port ongoing in the project, but it sort of happens in bursts. They were very actively working on it for a while, and then people sort of stopped working on it so much, and now I don't really know the state of it. But there was a build fix for the kernel this morning. All right, hopefully I managed to mute the microphone there. I just had to clear my throat. But yeah, so there is an ongoing ARM64 thing, but I don't know the state of it since it's not really something I'm personally interested in. Ecoptic says, hello, Andreas. I was wondering, what's your opinion on microkernels? I don't really have a strong opinion on microkernels. I tried to write one once and I didn't enjoy the experience, so I stopped. But because I haven't spent significant time working on microkernels, I don't really have a strong opinion, and certainly nothing worth hearing. Rikard Andersson says, this is a bit random, but as someone who has only ever doodled in C++, what is it about the standard library that appears to rub everyone the wrong way? I think, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but the main thing that I dislike about the standard library is that it's just extremely large and tends to increase your build times significantly. I was doing some experiments just a while ago because we now have, if you're familiar with Godbolt, the C++ compile explorer, you can actually use Serenity libraries on here these days because there's a Serenity module or whatever, and I was playing around with it the other day, trying to compare what are the build times if you do write something in STL versus you write it in our own things to be used in Serenity, and STL was something like 3 or 4 times slower to compile, and it was just contrived examples that I doodle around with, but that also matches my more anecdotal experience, that the standard library of C++ is just humongous and it slows down your build, and I don't feel personally that I get as much value from it as I'm paying in inconvenience with the build times. And then on a more personal note, I find it looks very unpleasant. I don't like the way it looks, and for those reasons and many other reasons, I choose to use something that's not the STL. And if you look around, you can find tons of projects that have come to similar conclusions for their own reasons, but there's usually a bit of overlap with the reasons. But I think it's not that there's anything wrong with using the standard library. It's just that after you write a lot of code, you start to develop some opinions and some feelings about what you're okay with the standard library, how much of a penalty you're okay with libraries imposing on your project and on your life is, if that makes sense. Let's see, Abhishek says, man, got the job where I need to learn COBOL, and I'm clueless. I'm scared, to be honest. Okay, well, I don't know COBOL. I never tried to learn it, but I hope that you will have a good time doing it. I think that sounds like an adventure to me. To get a job where you have to learn something, presumably to maintain like a really old code base, like a really old mature code base that has to be kept working. It sounds like it could be fun, in the same way as, well, like doing really difficult things can be fun sometimes. Supernova says, what are thoughts on porting Qt to Serenity? I don't really have any thoughts on that. Somebody is doing it. There is a Qt port ongoing, but I don't really have thoughts on it. That's nice, I guess. I don't really care personally about ports, because I enjoy building everything. I like that we're building everything from scratch, and it's perfectly fine that people show up and they want to port this or port that, and they just want to see their favorite thing running on Serenity. But for me personally, I'm much more interested in building our own things. So whenever somebody asks me about a port, I always just say, I don't know, I'm sure it's fine. But I don't have strong opinions one way or the other. Luke Holder says, new to understanding the project, is there a policy of having everything in the operating system written from scratch, like PDF, HTML rendering, etc.? Yes, absolutely. This is exactly what our policy is. We write everything from scratch, and it's going to take time. It's going to be a lot of work, but we'll have a lot of fun doing it, and we'll come out on the other end of it having learned a million things and built something that is sort of unique and fits perfectly into our environment. And instead of trying to shoehorn a bunch of third-party components, we'll have something that just fits together like a piece of the puzzle. And so far that's been going really well. And I'm really impressed and proud of everybody who works on the system, because we've gone from like, we've gone from a very small thing to an increasingly complex and sophisticated thing. And of course, we're nowhere near the levels of sophistication of some other open source projects that exist out there, but we are increasing in sophistication, and it's really cool to see people grow along with the project, because we're entering into more and more interesting areas of programming, I guess. And it's cool to see that people are keeping up. Ecoptic says, Andreas, do you get tired of saying that you don't have a plan? Not really. I don't mind. I've been saying I don't have a plan long before I started live streaming. People kept asking me, like, the very first times when I posted about Serenity online, or when people found the system, and some people would reach out to me in email, the very first things that people were asking me would be, what is your plan, Andreas? Like, how do you plan to do this? How do you plan to do that? And from day one, I've been telling people that I simply don't have a plan. So it is what it is. Let's see. S-Seller says, Andreas, hello, how are you doing? I was a little sick for 2 weeks. I was able to join you today. Well, welcome back. Glad to hear you're not so sick anymore. That is very nice. It is nice to not be sick. Every time I get sick, I always start to feel like it's never gonna end, and this is just my life now. I'm just a sick person, and then it ends, and I regain faith. It's so stupid. Let's see. SLR says, customization settings in operating systems are very limited. Adding settings that will allow settings for some hardware, such as drivers and processors, in SerenityOS will attract advanced users. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Also, I don't I don't necessarily want to attract any users. I'm fine only attracting developers. Attracting users to me feels like counterproductive because I don't want to build something that everybody wants to use. I just want to build something that I want to use, and invite people who want to build something for themselves to join in and tailor it to their needs. But as far as like building anything for somebody who's not here, I don't really want to do that. And I think that puts us in a kind of interesting position as a project, because most projects try to attract users, or they try to satisfy the needs of outside people, but that is definitely not something I want to do. So we'll see how the strategy works out. Martin, oh, I think Martin is the person who did the Qt port, right? Yeah, he says, Qt 6 port has already been merged. There is no Qt network support, but otherwise it's more or less works. That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool indeed. And the cool thing about porting something like Qt, I think, is that it allows you to build more ports, right? Just because we don't need to use Qt anywhere in our system doesn't mean that you can't build more sophisticated ports. And something like Qt gives you access to a lot of new ports, just like SDL gives you access to ports, or GTK or something like that. Joey Smith says, well, hello, Andreas. Well, hello, Joey Smith. Been looking at libsql and wondering about structures like btree. Do those more properly belong in ACK? That is very possible, although sometimes it happens that like a data structure is built within an application first, and then at some point we realize that, hey, wait a minute, this might be generally useful, and then we move it to ACK. But recently, I'm kind of thinking more and more about ACK, about how it's supposed to be agnostic to kernel versus user space, but a lot of the ACK data structures have implicit allocation, and implicit allocation is not really kernel friendly. And we've been doing a lot of work, especially Brian and Edan and some others have been doing a lot of work on getting rid of implicit allocation data structures in the kernel, and just got rid of ACK string yesterday, I think. So when we're adding new data structures to ACK, we should probably take care to make them explicitly allocating instead, by having like APIs that can fail if allocation doesn't succeed. So it's not necessarily just like a matter of lifting a data structure from an application and bringing it to ACK, but it might be, there might be a scenario where like you can lift it and bring it to some other user space area. I'm not really sure yet. I feel like my idea of the ACK identity is changing a little bit because of the trouble with implicit allocation. And of course, when I say implicit allocation, I mean stuff like a vector or a hash map, where you insert something into a hash map, and we may need to grow the underlying storage, but the insert API has no way to communicate an allocation failure to the caller. So that doesn't fly in the kernel, and because of that, like we have to rethink some of these APIs. Anyway, but in the short term, I think it's always good to think about if we can make more general use of a data structure. But maybe we need something that's not ACK, but like user space data structures that are allowed to implicitly allocate. I don't know. Hank says, gotta remember to appreciate the days you don't have a stuffed nose. Yeah, indeed, indeed. And I actually have a little bit of a stuffed nose today, so if you notice me tapping the microphone sometimes, that's just me muting it and clearing my nose. Jordan says, have you ever dealt with burnout as a developer in the industry, or do you live and breathe ones and zeros? Yeah, I've had times of burnout, absolutely. I did a video about burnout a long time ago now, I guess. Didn't I? I feel like I did. I'm sure I have a video somewhere on my channel about burnout. Apparently Google can't find it. But yeah, of course I've had burnout. I think everybody reaches burnout at some point. I don't live and breathe ones and zeros, or at least in the past I certainly didn't. I used to have this problem that I thought that whatever streak of motivation and momentum I was currently on was eventually going to run out. So I had to get as much done as possible right now while I was motivated, because once I run out of motivation, I have no idea when it's coming back. And that was a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because it made me go really hard, which made me burn out that little motivation that I had, and burn out, and then lose motivation, of course. And the cycle was self-perpetuating because of my kind of silly beliefs about how that would work. So I guess what I learned was that I shouldn't try to rely on motivation, but instead build habits and cultivate discipline, so that I don't have to rely on motivation. And it's better to have a slow trickle of doing a little bit every day than doing a lot in a burst and then just burning out and doing nothing for weeks. But everybody deals with these things differently. Luke says, just want to shout out that ECDHE got merged, so now we can visit many more websites. That is very sweet. Yeah, shout outs to the people who did the elliptic curve cryptography stuff. That's really awesome. Gives us access to a whole new range of web servers around the web, and a lot of new interesting problems to debug in the browser. Very cool work. Bucky Wolf says, Andreas, your office looks like a closet. Yeah, it's because it is a closet. You've got to ask for some more Patreon donations. Got to get you a window at least. Well, I don't mind. I like living modestly. I'm certainly not going to try to pressure anybody to help me get a fancier office. But I was thinking just the other day that, like, wow, I've been sitting in this closet for like 2 years, so many hours every day just working on this stuff. It is a lot of time to spend in a little closet, but it's going okay. And we are looking for a bigger place, which is also going to be cheaper. So I'm kind of doubly excited about that, but we haven't found the right place yet, and got to find the right place, you know. But we'll see. But it will be a very good change when we eventually make it, because I will have more space and it will cost less money. So I don't even have to ask for more Patreon donations if everything works out correctly here. That's not to say that I don't appreciate the Patreon donations, of course, and all the other platforms. I really do. But I've also been quite happy sitting here and working on my stuff. There's no distractions, and it's been really good. Let's see, Ria says, are you afraid as the project grows, some people who maintain part of Serenity will lose interest? No, not really. I mean, that has already happened in some parts. People drift in and out, and that's perfectly fine. I just want everybody to have fun, and I want Serenity to be a happy place for people. I want people to come to our Discord server or to the repository, and I want them to feel like they're having a really good time when they're working on it. And if they feel pressured to work on it, or if they feel like they have to because of whatever reason and they're not having fun, I would rather that they do something else. And I absolutely wouldn't hold it against anybody if they wanted to leave. I'm just grateful for the time that we had together and for the work that they've done on the project that I love. And that's really all there is to it. I think really I just want it to be a happy place for people. And that's it. Simon says, thought about adding swap to memory. I don't have thoughts about that really. It might be an idea. I don't really like the user experience of swapping things out. I feel like it's a very crappy experience because your computer just slows down dramatically, and there has to be a better way, I guess, is the way I feel about it. And we've been doing a lot of work on more like synchronous reporting of memory allocation failures in user space, and there's a lot more work to do in that area. But I can't shake the feeling that it has to be possible to respond to memory allocation failure or memory pressure in a structured and pleasant way that doesn't screw over the user. It's a hard problem, but I don't know. I feel like it's a solvable problem, and it feels to me like everybody just ignores this problem, either by like, oh, we'll just crash if we run out of memory, or we'll just go to swap, or we'll suspend the program or whatever. But I don't know. There has to be a better way. That's my thought about it. Vilmos says, hiya, when did you first write the first line of code for Serenity? That you can find in the Git repository, I suppose. The first commit was on October 10th, 2018, but it actually started a few days earlier because I was just hacking on a bunch of files that were not in the Serenity repository. Like, I was just having a directory of random C++ code. So someday before October 10th, but I've been counting October 10th, 2018 as the project birthday because it's the date of the first commit. Remy says, how is the file system structured in SerenityOS? It is structured as any typical Unix file system, so very similar to Linux or BSDs. You know, you just go to / and ls, and you should recognize the directories that are here. Man, these this double pixel size mode is so thick. Let's see. Yeah, it's like a typical Unix system, so nothing crazy. I'm not sure how to pronounce this name. Well, I'm gonna call you Jones. Jones says, do you think that C++20 features like coroutines, concepts, and modules will change how we write C++ programs dramatically? Dramatically, I don't know. I don't think so. But there's probably little situations where these things are useful. But then again, what do I know? You know, back when C++ 11 came out, I looked at it and I thought, what's the big deal? But now there are so many C++ 11 features that I use constantly, and it would be incredibly frustrating to go back before C++ 11. So who knows? Like, I just I think time will tell what stuff in C++20 ends up becoming indispensable everyday tools. We'll see. Luke says, Andreas, do you see yourself working on this in 20 years? Yes, absolutely. I don't see why not. It's so much fun, and there's so much to do, and the project is so broad, and I get to do what I love, which is programming, and because there's no end goal in sight here, right? Like, it's all just, let's just build this and build better, and keep improving, and we have a lot of moving targets. Like we want to interface with the web, so we have to have something that can interpret the web platform, and of course we want to be able to watch videos and listen to music and things like that. So there's always new work coming into an operating system, just because the data out there changes and the way that you communicate with other computers change. So I think there will always be something to do, and if I am still doing this in 20 years, then I'm very, very happy. And if I'm not alone, that would be awesome. But if I'm alone, I'm still gonna keep doing it because it's just too much fun. Victor says, "Hey Andreas, thanks for keeping doing the Discord series. Very fun and informative to watch the browser maturing due to it." And then Yuan says, "I second Victor. It's been super fun to watch and learn more about how a browser works internally." Yeah, the Discord series has been a lot of fun. And sometimes if I've felt like while I was recording, I felt like, oh, this is pretty little progress for the amount of effort that's going into it, and I wonder if it will translate into a good video. But I just decided to post everything I recorded anyway, because I thought, why not show the real process, right? Like I can try to pretend that it's less work or easier, but I feel like showing a completely accurate portrayal of all the little details that you have to fix to make a browser load Discord is it's interesting. At least it's interesting to me. So hearing that people enjoy it, it's really, really good. And of course, there are other people who also hack on stuff that improves Discord support. And I wish I could show you on video what they're doing, but I can't really because they are working independently of me. But I try to report on stuff that they're doing. So one thing that's really awesome right now, for example, is that Ben on Discord implemented basic support for web workers. So worker was probably not the best search. Web workers, and together with Andrew, they both act on this. So I think the Discord login page spawns a web worker to do something. I'm not exactly sure what, but to allow that page to work, Ben and Andrew implemented web workers, and that's really awesome. And I'm really happy about that. I'm happy about all the other people who decide to hack on Discord as well. Let's see. Oh, geez, I got real far behind here. Sorry about that. Revelation 3.9 says, "I have been away from Serenity for 6 months. Can you in one sentence tell me the biggest changes?" I don't really have the perspective to tell you what in one sentence are the biggest changes for 6 months. I would suggest skimming through the monthly update videos for the last 6 months. Or better yet, building the system and looking around for yourself to see what seems new. But yeah, if I had that kind of perspective available on tap, that would be awesome, but I don't. Sorry. Let's see. Pranay says, "What is your computer specification that you use to create Serenity?" Well, my computer, I should really put this in the FAQ, but my computer was built from parts that people sent me on the SerenityOS subreddit. And if I can find the post, where is it? All right, here's a post of me assembling the computer. So basically, a bunch of people, here it is, computer hardware donation for Serenity development. I'll link that in the chat. Basically, a bunch of lovely people on the subreddit decided that my computer that they saw in the videos was too slow, and they're all going to send me parts so I can build a better one. And that's the computer I'm still using to this day. So you can see all about it in this Reddit thread. Let's see. Rick says, Lurker here. Just wanted to say, Andreas and team, great job with Serenity. Old operating system developer myself back in syllable days, and I'm impressed of how much you all get done. Congratulations. Cool. Well, thank you, Rick. Back in the syllable days. When were the syllable days? The syllable desktop. When were those days? 2002? Latest release 2012? It's not incredibly long ago, but it's still a while ago, I guess. Oh, wait a minute. It's 20 years ago. Oh my goodness. Okay. It felt like oh man. I'm getting a little old, I think. 2002 was not that long ago. Right? Okay, never mind. But thank you, Rick. Burner 25507 says, since when have you switched to the Google search engine? Well, I like to mix it up, use different search engines. Don't worry, I still use Bing. Arseny says, Andreas, do you have any plants? Ooh, great question. I thought you were asking if I have a plan first, and I was getting ready to answer that usual question, but plants. At the moment, I don't have any plants of my own, but my wife has a lot of plants in our house, and they are the kind of plants that grow down. So you put them up high and they grow downwards, and they are in the windows and in the bathroom sometimes, and very green, and it's very, very nice. It's nice for the air inside to have plants. I don't know what they're called though, but plants that grow down, basically. Leorian says, your browser project made me revive my 15-year-old mothballed scripting engine project. Excellent. I hope work on it is going interestingly. That's cool, though. Andre says, hi, Andreas. Is it possible to use alternative desktop environments in Serenity? So hypothetically, if someone ports an X server or a Wayland compositor, would it be possible to launch at startup? Of course. If you do that, you can launch it at startup all you want. Baitink says, would you ever do a vlog about a day in your life? Yes, at 1 million subscribers, I will do a full life vlog. So see you there. Luke Holder says, if you're in a closet, you should check your CO2 levels. Serious. I had a bad experience with it. Yeah, so I am in a closet indeed, but the door is just slightly open to let air in, so it's okay. Although sometimes when I record videos, I close the door completely, and then I can only sit for so long before the CO2 issue becomes an issue. And it's something we've talked about before here. And people have made fun of me for using the CO2 level as a natural way to know when it's time to stop recording. It is kind of stupid. Mustafa says, hello, finally been able to make it to office hours after a long time. Welcome here, Mustafa. Oh, and then Zhao said, I find it funny that you can see the chair skids on the wall. Yeah, guilty as charged, or busted, if you will. These are indeed chair skids. Sometimes I just rotate so fast, I don't think about what I'm doing, and I skid the chair on the wall. What are you gonna do? I tried removing them, or like covering them up in the beginning, but then, what am I doing, you know? Autumn says, do you think your productivity changes when you're making a video while programming? Yeah, absolutely. I think I become a lot more productive if I'm recording while programming, because I go into the headspace where I don't allow myself to get remotely distracted by anything. So if something happens on my phone, or I just get curious about some random unrelated thing, I just ignore it. Whereas normally when I'm programming, I allow myself to get distracted a lot more. So when I'm recording, that's definitely when I'm the most productive, because I just shut everything out and focus on exactly what I'm trying to do. Mustafa says, I've been meaning to ask for a while, what is a fly string? How do I know when to use a fly string versus string view? The fly string is a deduplicating string, or uniquing, interning string, if you will. So same concept as many other languages have. It's sometimes called interned string. Basically, it's a string that ensures that the underlying characters only have a single instance within the program. So if you create two fly strings with the same text in them, they will internally point to the same memory. So they have shared storage. And the benefit of fly string is that you can compare two fly strings by just comparing the pointers to storage, because if they are identical, then they will have identical storage pointers. So it gives you constant time comparison, and it reduces memory usage. If you have a lot of strings that occur multiple times in your program, they can all point to the same place. But the drawback of fly string is that you have to maintain an index of all of these things. So if you look in flystring.cpp, you'll find that we have a hash table that tracks all the currently live fly strings. That's where we get the deduplication mechanism is built on that. So we look for an existing fly string in this hash table when one is instantiated, so that we don't have two of the same. That's basically it. Hubers Inc. says, hello, only just found out about this project. Well, welcome to SerenityOS, Hubers Inc. Spooky Potat says, I've been thinking of trying to get .NET 6 running on Serenity. Could be an interesting challenge. Could be indeed. I'm sure it would be an interesting challenge, and I encourage you to try it out. Cbot says, hello, would you mind explaining locking in the kernel? Do you use read-write locks mostly when synchronizing threads in the kernel? Just trying to wrap my head around threading in the kernel. So in the kernel, we have two main types of locks. We have spin lock. We have spin lock, and we have mutex. And then they also come in some different flavors. So for spin lock, there is spin lock and recursive spin lock. But for mutex, there's only mutex, and mutex is always recursive. But basically, we have spin locks and mutexes. And spin locks are for situations where, well, you know, it's like just basic spin locks and mutexes. You can read about those anywhere. One of the main problems we have right now, though, is that spin locks create an implicit critical section, so they actually prevent interrupts on the current CPU. And if you try to take a mutex while you're already holding a spin lock, then a mutex may block the thread, whereas a spin lock cannot block the thread. And we just kind of allow that, even though it doesn't really make sense. So it's possible to take a spin lock, which implicitly disables interrupts, and then take mutex, where you block the thread and implicitly enable interrupts. And then you create a really weird situation where you're holding a spin lock, but interrupts are enabled. And it's a bit unpleasant and something we need to work on. Anyway, now I'm just getting sidetracked by a refactoring that needs to happen, but that's basically what we have, spin locks and mutexes. And I think if you have a more specific question, we can look at that, but it's not really different than any other system. So I don't know if you are familiar with spin locks and mutexes. I guess the one thing I would like to show you actually is we do have this thing called spin lock protected and mutex protected, and it's a template class that allows you to wrap a piece of data together with a spin lock. And then the way that you use this is, I don't know, let me go somewhere where I can type some code. So say that you have let's say you have a vector of int, that you have some really important stuff in this vector, or let's call it ints, And maybe you want to access this vector from 2 different threads. Now, if you just access it this way, this is obviously going to be a problem. If we imagine that somebody in another thread can see this vector as well, this might not be thread safe. So what you would typically do is like you would have also a spin lock, and then you would take a put a locker on that thing around the scope where you're working with it. So, okay, so now it's locked, right? This is pretty typical stuff. But I forget who it was, if it was Jean-Baptiste or somebody who came up with this pattern that we use now, which is spin lock protected. So instead of having 2 separate things like this, we instead do this. So I'll call that int2. And now, instead of doing this pattern, what you do is you call with on this thing and you pass in a lambda. And the lambda gets called with this thing, with the spin lock inside of this thing held. So as long as you're inside this lambda, you're holding the lock, and it passes you the vector as a reference parameter here. So you can then do int2 append 1. And this pattern is really, really sweet. I'm really pleased with how it's working out, because this means that you can't access the vector inside in any other way. You have to call with, so you can't access this without taking the lock. So it sort of enforces synchronization, whereas with this old pattern that's still everywhere in the kernel, and we need to replace it with more of this style. With this pattern, it's very easy to forget, right? Like you could do this, and now you have an unsynchronized operation. So that's something to know about. And we also have mutex protected vector, if you prefer to have a mutex. And the main difference between spinlock and mutex, in our kernel at least, is that mutexes are allowed to block the current thread. So a spinlock cannot block the thread. It will just spin until it will spin that CPU until it gets the lock. Whereas this guy, he will just go to sleep and schedule another thread, do something else, and then come back here once the lock is available. Anyways, I hope that made sense. Let's see. Lawrence says, what cool kernel feature would you like to see? Do you think updating the file system to something made this millennium would be worthwhile? Sure, and I would encourage you to work on it if you would like to see that. It's perfectly feasible to implement any file system in SerenityOS. Somebody just has to do the work. I'm able to do what I want to do with the existing file system at the moment, so I don't feel super motivated to improve it. But if somebody feels more motivated than me, then they are cordially invited to write a new file system implementation. Let's see. Oh man, I am so far behind. German WTB said, I think the biggest reason for programmers to ignore out-of-memory conditions is that APIs make it somewhat cumbersome to detect it at every possible allocations and also to handle it. Right. Yes, it is definitely an API convenience issue, but I still feel like there has to be a better way. There has to be some way to come up with the APIs that make this convenient enough that you would want to do it. Bihan says, hi Andreas, love the wallpaper. Is it available for download? Couldn't find it on GitHub. It's been posted on Discord many times. I will post it in the YouTube channel on Discord after the stream if you want it. Lorenzo says, you'll never be alone in this. We'll always be here to help you and support the project. Well, thank you, Lorenzo. I really appreciate that. It's so heartwarming that people want to stick around and work on this together with me. It's really, really awesome. I'm so grateful for all the support and all the company. It's so much better with all the people. So thank you. Let's see. Alex says, "Hey Andreas, do you have a count of fixmes throughout the project?" No, but I'm sure that you could create one very quickly, right? You could just git grep-c fixme dot. And then, well, I guess now we got one per file. Okay, we can just git grep and then pipe to wc-l. 908 instances of fixme. There you go. Burner said, "What is your favorite non-mainstream operating system besides Serenity? Haiku, Plan 9, Minix, and so on and so forth." I don't have a favorite. I guess I appreciate all of them. I think it's so awesome that there are so many different ones going on, and I'm really, really happy when, especially when I see young people just get into this stuff, because a new generation getting interested in low-level development, that's just such a beautiful thing, I think, because when I was growing up, programming was in general a lot more low level than it is today on average, right? Like today, programming on average is web development. And I was closer, my interests were closer to the average programming when I was young. But the kids who grow up today and they choose to get into low-level stuff, I think that's really awesome. I'm really happy to see it, that a new generation is exploring the space, and I'm curious to see what they'll be able to do. It's so cool if you see some of these operating system projects done by teenagers these days, what they're capable of. It's amazing. And the difference it makes that they have access to so much information these days that was harder to come by when I was a teenager, and the tools are better these days, and they have everything is like, they have more information and better tools, and they're able to make a lot cooler stuff than I could as a teenager. And that's so cool. I think it's really awesome to see. I'm curious to see what happens with that as it evolves. Let's see. Lorenzo says, "As an operating system developer myself, I can't stress how good the project is getting, and at the very least, it will be super useful in a number of fields in the future, like research." Well, that's nice. Nice sentiment. I'm always happy if it's useful to anybody for any reason. So, well, I guess we'll have to see what it ends up being useful for. And the literal definition of bruh says, "How does libui handle z-index and stacking? Like, what if I have a green box with some text inside of it and I update the box triggering a redraw? How does it know to also redraw the text over it?" So in libgui, all widgets exist within a z stacking order, and it's the insertion order. So if you add one widget and then you add another, then the second widget is on top of the first one. So it's back to front. And you can change insertion order. You can move to front, move to back. There are APIs for that in the widget class. Move to front, move to back. Yeah, and you can also reorganize them. And it's just the child order in the parent widget, basically, that determines the z-index or z order of widgets. Thrawn 2002 says, "Hi Andreas, with your recent adventures in Minecraft, have you ever thought about modding the game?" Not really, but my nephew has been installing a lot of mods recently, and he's really excited about it. He was showing me he got a mod that allows him to create teleport points, so that he doesn't have to type in the teleport command. He can just create teleportation points somehow, and he was very happy about that. And I guess it seemed a little convenient, I guess, but I'm happy playing vanilla, you know, keeping it simple. Alex says, "How are you finding out the command palette feature that you built a couple of weeks ago? Are you using it? Finding it useful?" I'm using it from time to time. I enjoy it. I think it still needs some work, but it's a very good thing, and I have some ideas for what to do next with it. But it's one of those things that just, now that we have it, it just feels like a natural part of the system. So I don't even think about it as new anymore. I just think it was always there. Aris Toth says, what you think about political/ideological stuff in the open source community? What will be your approach if some initiatives come to the Serenity community? I will just tell them to leave. I am not interested in integrating anybody's politics or ideology in the SerenityOS community. It's a completely neutral community where everybody is welcome. And if you start to invite anybody's politics or ideology into your project, then you will start to exclude everybody who's not in the same on the same page as that person. So it is my strong opinion that it's better to remain neutral and invite everybody, because this is a community about programming and like love for computers, and we don't want to ruin that by inviting this outside nonsense. Braulio says, what does your wife think about Serenity? Well, she tells me she likes it. She played a lot of Minesweeper. And sometimes when her own computer acts up, then she tells me I need to hurry up so she can start using Serenity on her computer instead. But she's not a programmer, so she's not completely the target audience for the system, at least not at the moment. But I sometimes, of course, I mean, I often show her what I'm working on, and I really enjoy it when she just sits down to try something out. And I need to do more of that, actually. Paul says, how much does your wife know about programming? Not very much. She's not a computer programmer. But she knows, I mean, she knows a little bit. She's worked at tech companies, so she knows her way around, but she's not a programmer. Let's see. Alex Major says, full life vlog, just this for several more hours. Yeah, exactly. Ooh, France with the super chat says, France mit says, I recently incorporated Serenity in a school presentation about operating systems. It went really well. Ladybug emoji. That's so cool. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. I would love to, if you had any slides or anything, I would love to see what you presented. But either way, that's really awesome. Thank you for doing that. And thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate that too. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I am still far behind. Marius says, hi Andreas, when programming, I always keep reviewing my code and thinking of many ways it could be better. You work so fast, and it seems that you rarely look at the surrounding code. Is this a mental decision to stay on a single task at hand, or is it just the way you function all the time? Any tips for your typical overthinker? So I try to stay very focused on a specific task, and you'll often hear me sort of verbalize when I catch myself trying to veer off the task. So I'll say something like, oh, let's not get distracted with that, or let's try to keep focus. Because of course I get distracted by, I notice all kinds of little things that aren't completely right in the surrounding code. But I think if you allow yourself to always get distracted by tempting little refactorings here and there, it's hard to make forward progress, especially in a video context where I'm recording a video and I want to do something. That's one thing that's that's different between recording Andreas and like non-recording Andreas, that when I'm not recording, I will indulge those refactoring ideas a bit more often. But I do try to resist the anything that would take so much time that it distracts from what I'm trying to achieve. And I think I suspect that a really good approach to this is to simply take notes, like to take notes of things that you want to change so that you finish what you're doing right now and then you go and make the changes you also want to make. Just having a simple notepad like that's actually what I do. I use like a little text editor that I put little notes in if I come across some ideas that I want to do after my current patch, and I just write down like, go do this thing, and then it takes 10 seconds, and now I can put it out of my mind until I'm finished with what I'm currently doing. Lorenzo says, just a quick question. How/where have you implemented context switching in the kernel? I really can't wrap my head around that. Context switching is implemented, I mean, it's a little bit spread out, but the main place to look is processor.cpp. So if you're looking for the x86-64 context switching, it's all in, it's basically all in this file. Like the nitty-gritty details of the actual inline assembly stuff. So that's where you can look. So kernel, arch, x86, x86-64, processor.cpp. Let's see, Daniel here. Daniel says, hi Andreas, good to see you again. I was wondering, in terms of scope, what do you think is more ambitious, to build an operating system or a modern browser? Well, from my perspective, an operating system includes a modern browser. So the question is a little bit hard to answer. Because I think you can't really offer somebody an operating system if it doesn't have a browser, right? Because it's not really useful realistically, at least not where I live. Like I need to use the internet to just do basic life tasks. So, and I need web access for that. I need web access to interact with my postal service, with my government, all kinds of things. So it's just something that I need my computer to do. But anyway, I know that's not what you're asking. So I do think that you have to scope things though. Like, what is an operating system? Like, does it mean just a kernel? Because it's a lot easier to write a kernel than it is to write a web browser. But does it mean a kernel and a window manager? Does it mean a kernel, a window manager, a terminal, a shell, and a desktop file manager? Like, it really depends where you draw the line. And at some point, the complexity of the operating system minus the browser becomes larger than the complexity of the browser, but it's hard to say exactly where it is if you don't define exactly what an operating system means to you. And also, like a browser, you can build a simple browser and more complicated browser. And you can, like, there's a lot of stuff that I would consider optional, like a lot of web standards that I would consider completely optional. Like I have no interest in web USB or web Bluetooth or things like that, that some people insist are super important. I don't think that a browser needs to have those to be considered a browser, right? So you have to define exactly what's included, I think, to be able to compare. But then I also don't really know what you learn by comparing these things. Let's see, Grolix says, hey Andreas, love this project and following along. Is the Visual Basic style UI builder tool still in development? Started programming with Visual Basic when I was a kid and I always liked building UIs with it. No, we got rid of the that style of UI builder a long time ago because nobody really used it, and what we instead use is the GML language. So that's basically what we use to write our interfaces. So like here's the GML for the browser settings window, and you know, we had the form designer lying around for over a year, but people just didn't use it and nobody wanted to work on it. And I put this thing into the system and everybody wanted to use it, and or not everybody, but like a lot of people started using it right away because it's just so much nicer to describe user interfaces in this type of way. So we kind of learned that while it was tempting from a nostalgia perspective to implement a Visual Basic style form builder, this type of markup solution was just a lot more pleasant to use, I guess, or more something that we actually wanted to use, and we had to make the pragmatic choice to go with the thing that people actually want to use. Spooky Potat says, what is the single best lesson you've learned while working on SerenityOS? Oh, the single best lesson. I think that if you just don't stop and you don't give up, then you have no idea how far you can go. Like I'm well past the point where I would have given up in a past life, and I just kept going instead. And now I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next, but it's so interesting and it's so cool. And that's the advice I would give to anybody who's working on anything that they're passionate about, to just don't stop, don't give up, and see what happens if you don't. It's really cool. Krishna says, having any ideas on finding 0-day exploits on Serenity? Sure, I have lots of ideas, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to try to find them myself. And I would encourage everybody else to try to find some exploits as well if they want to. It's a lot of fun. Low Rights Code says, hello there, I hope you're doing good. Really loving the current browser hacking series. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoy it. Flo says, I recently rewatched an old episode where you started building Hack Studio, and the comments were about when you will switch to Serenity as your daily driver. Over a year later, and I have the same question. And I have the same answer to that question as always, that I will start using it as my daily driver when it is more convenient than using Ubuntu Linux, which is what I'm using now. I'm using Ubuntu strictly because it's more convenient. But when the balance switches, I will just use Serenity instead. And I'm not in a hurry, and I don't mind that it takes time because, as we talked about earlier, I'm probably going to be here 20 years from now anyway, so I got time. I don't mind making it nice and right. Let's see. Diego says, do you think about making a release one day? I don't really think about that. No, I don't have a plan one way or the other. Ooh, haha, with the super chat saying, just following the plan formulated in the previous office hours. That's awesome, but I don't remember the plan formulated. What was that in reference to? Thank you for the super chat, but I don't remember what the plan was. See, I'm not good with plans. Apparently, supposedly, there was a plan formulated and I can't even remember it. So that's part of why I don't make plans, because I can't even remember them. Let's see. What is his name? Death Human? Is that how I'm supposed to read that? Death Human? Or Deal Human? Says, do you talk to yourself about the code you are working on in the same fashion out loud when you record a video when you're working off camera? No, not really. I do say things to myself sometimes, but not as much as when I'm recording, because then I would drive my wife crazy. Because I can't sit here and talk all day like that. But I try to think, and my thought process is the same as the thing you hear when I'm recording, right? I'm saying my thoughts out loud. It's just that it's in my head, so it's a lot faster. Like, obviously it takes longer to say something than it does to think it. Let's see. France, who did the presentation, said that he had no slides, he just showed the system running. Oh, that's very brave of you to show it running. That's awesome. Could have gone bad, but apparently it went well, so that's awesome. Alexander says, I was watching from 30 minutes ago since I missed the start. Just wanted to chime in quickly and say the Discord series is amazing, and I check every day for a new episode, which shouldn't pressure you in any way. Yeah, yeah, I know. A lot of people have been making silly memes about like how they're refreshing, waiting for more episodes. It seems like it's really struck a chord with people, this Discord series. So I'm really happy about that because the series it's so much fun to make. I love working on this type of stuff, and the fact that people enjoy watching it so much is that's just awesome. And it's kind of fun because when I start making the episode, I never know like what we're going to achieve in the episode, like what kind of progress we'll make, and it's a lot of fun to just go through that process and to share it. Mr. Brax says a browser is a bit interesting because you have to follow a lot of standards, but with other stuff you can just wing it. Yeah, to a large extent that is true, right? A browser is what a browser does is determined to a great extent by specifications. And I find that makes the work very enjoyable. And it has a lot in common with emulator development. Building a browser is like building the most complicated emulator for a moving target. And it's really fun. Let's see. Andrew with the sarcasm here saying, oh yes, GML language, just like the ATM machine and PIN number. Yes, Andrew. That's right. Riyadh says, Andreas me. Andreas you. Anthony Iacono says, I imagine one day we'll watch you run an emulator of Ubuntu inside Serenity rather than the other way around. Yes, that will definitely happen at some point. Then the circle will be complete. Diego says, does Serenity support paging to disk? No, it currently does not implement any kind of swapping. Marco says, would be easy to uncouple the apps and build it on Serenity itself. This would decrease the build time if some big libraries aren't added. Not exactly sure what you mean by that, but yes, you can definitely decouple the build a bit if you want to. And we do have there's a component system in place, so you can like selectively choose which components you want to build. So if you don't want to build any of the demos or games, for example, you can get a faster build. I don't use it personally because my computer is fast enough. I don't mind waiting for the extra things, but there's probably going to come a day when I don't want to waste for all the extra things anymore. Jeje says, make memes, get super chats was basically the plan. Oh, dude, that's a good plan. Make memes, get super chats. That's not a bad plan. That's a reasonable plan. So thank you for the meme chat, the meme super chat. Andrew Castor says, does GML stand for GML markup language? Perhaps it does. Or if we could work a GNU in there somehow, like. GNU's not a markup language? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, never mind. Spooky Patat says, how do you achieve a good work-life balance? And does your wife get annoyed if you spend all day/night working on Serenity? So I've talked about this a bunch of times about work-life balance, and it's a like continuous project for me to try to figure out what to do. And it's definitely trickier now that I work on Serenity full time because I'm always tempted to work on it constantly. And what I try to do is, lately I've been playing video games to sort of get myself away from the computer. So I just go and I play some PlayStation games or something just to take my mind off programming. And that's been going really well. Had a lot of fun, played a lot of games that I was not familiar with from before, so all good. But now I'm kind of out of games that I want to play, so I need to either find some new game and get into, or find some other way to distract myself. And I also am a big fan of physical exercise as a way to get work-life balance. Like if you drag yourself to a gym or you go out running or something like that, and you'll just take your mind off work, I think that creates a very natural contrast. And that's at least a tool that I use to create contrast in my life between work and everything else. But I definitely don't have all the answers or the right answers for work-life balance. It's something I'm constantly exploring and learning more about, and it's always valuable to hear how other people approach it, because I think it's one of those things that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to work-life balance. Like everybody has to take the subject seriously and explore it for themselves and discuss it with others and see what you can learn from each other. Let's see. QB says, might be weird question, but do you think in your head in English or in Swedish? In English mostly, to be honest. Although sometimes if I get very emotional, it switches to Swedish. Some kind of reptile brain behavior, I guess. Like if I get very upset, or I hit my toe on something, or step on a Lego or whatever, I start cursing in Swedish internally. But if I'm like calmly thinking about programming or something like that, it goes out in English, in the old brain. Tobias says, bonjour, Kling. Bonjour to you, Tobias. Bonjour. I thought you were German, but I suppose Germans can also say bonjour. Caleb says, hello. As someone new to SerenityOS with a million questions that have probably already been asked, what is the best way to get caught up beyond the website without sounding redundant? I have the FAQ, which is in the bottom left of the screen right here, and also in the pinned chat message. And I definitely encourage anybody to check the FAQ if it has something. Like all the most common questions are here. But truthfully, I don't mind people asking things that we've talked about before. That's just part of live streaming, is that there's always going to be new people coming in who are curious about what we're doing here, and I'm happy to talk to new people who have old questions. That's just fine. So if there's something you want to know about that isn't answered anywhere obviously, then just ask, you know. And then everybody who knows the answers, they'll just have to listen to me answer it once again, and I'm sure they don't mind. And welcome to the project, by the way. Nice to have you here. Bush itself says, is Gopher support coming through the browser? If you implement it, it'll come right away. Cbot says, you skipped my question. I'm sorry about that. I didn't see it. But here is another. Do you prefer philosophical questions or technical questions? I like both. And I think the best office hours are the ones where we get both, so that I'm forced to deal with all kinds of questions. And I have to switch from talking about synchronization primitives to work-life balance, and just jump between totally different brain disciplines. I feel like that's really fun, and we get to combine things that aren't often combined normally. That's really nice. T Baslanice says, what are the top 3 issues in the kernel? Well, I think that's different for depends on who you ask, right? But if you ask me personally, what are the top 3 issues in the kernel right now that need some love? I would say multi-core support, especially on x86-64. I think the boot code for multi-core doesn't work on x86-64, so that's definitely important. And then stability. So like fixing issues like deadlocks or race conditions, and then also performance. Performance is always something that we want to improve, especially when it comes to People telling me that, oh, when are you going to use Serenity to do all your work instead of Ubuntu? Part of what makes Ubuntu so convenient is that it is very performant, because it's a very mature, performant kernel. And there are a lot of optimizations that we don't have in our kernel, which would be really important to implement. So I guess those are my top 3 issues. They're really broad, but important issues. Multi-core, better multi-core, especially x86-64, and then stability, and then performance. Totally broad issues, not specific at all. Supernova says, the best part about the Discord series is that the end result will be really cool. Yes, I think so too. Quindlezorf with the super chat. Thank you so much, Quindlezorf. That's a very unusual name. I don't know if I've ever seen this word or name, but Quindlezorf says, thank you for doing this. I've been programming for 20 years and your videos have helped reignite my interests in improving my skills. Kick ass. That's so awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And this whole journey with SerenityOS started for me with just a desire to reignite my own love for programming, because I remembered loving programming so much when I started, but I didn't have that spark, and I was trying to rekindle it, and something happened and I rekindled it into such a fire that it set other people on fire as well. And how cool is that? So thank you so much for saying that. I'm really glad to hear it, and I hope that we can continue getting people fired up about programming, because it is a sweet hobby, let's say. Very sweet hobby. Thank you. Ari's Toad says, if you had a magic wand that could instantly solve one fix me, what would be your choice? Oh man, I don't know. Let me find a fix me. That's not a fix me. Let's find a random fix me. Hold down, page down. All right, we ended up in the ext2 file system. Maybe something here. This invalidation is way too hardcore. It's sad to throw away the whole cache. That sounds like a good fix me. Maybe I would wave my wand at that. I don't know. I think there's so many different fix me's, and I don't think I can choose one of them. I would just point it at a random one and be happy if it got fixed. But maybe I should sit down and do some fix me fixes at some point. Just make a day out of it. That would be a nice way to spend the day, actually. Alexander says, get the Elden Ring from Software when it comes out in a couple of days. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to play Elden Ring, although probably not in the first couple of days, because in this day and age, I've learned that you're better off just waiting for the first patch or two to come out for games. It's kind of the same as when my phone wants to update to like iOS 16.0. I know from experience that I'm just going to wait for the .1 or .2 or whatever. It's just such a better experience. So for Elden Ring, I'm going to go with that strat. But Elden Ring does look like a cool game for sure. I've loved every From Software game I've played so far. So, and Matas with the super chat. Thank you so much, Matas. Matas Lesinkas. That sounds vaguely Baltic, but I'm not sure. But thank you for the super chat and the support. Really appreciate that. Galaxy says, hey, I think what you're doing is pretty awesome, not gonna lie. What would you recommend I do to learn C++? I have experience with programming, I just think C++ is kinda neat. Well, I recommend that you write a bunch of C++. And when you feel comfortable writing C++ yourself, then you could consider joining a project where a bunch of people got together to write C++ together. And that's how I got better at C++ in the early days of my C++ career, was that I started just hacking on open source C++ projects together with others. And A lot of people choose SerenityOS as their first C++ project together with others. So, and you know, I'm honored that somebody would choose that, and it's a fantastic way to improve your skills, to work together with others. So I definitely definitely recommend doing that if possible. And you don't have to do it on the internet with strangers. If you have friends, you can do something together with them, but usually it's easier to find people online who are doing something that you might want to do. But yeah, I mean, what you say here, like, I just think C++ is kind of neat. I agree. And this feeling, this is such a good feeling. When you think something is kind of neat, just pull on that thread and see where it goes, because it always goes somewhere awesome. Anthony says, yeah, that. As I watch office hours on the stair climber at the gym because I'm hopelessly addicted to software engineering. Wow. You're watching office hours on the stair climber. That is concerning, but but okay. Maybe I should put on like a good beat here for you, so you can have like a little drum beat in the background of office hours, just for the viewers who are simultaneously stair climbing. Somebody with a zero length nickname here says, "Hi Andreas, why some variables have the prefix m underscore?" And then a bunch of people say member. Yes, it's for member variables. Wait, hold on. Devashish says, here's a philosophical one then. What is a cat? Oh, that's a philosophical question. What is a cat? Cat. Cat is a divine being, I think. It's fascinating to me how humans, throughout the ages, always seem to have this extremely strong affection for cats. Like you look back on old like cave paintings or like Egyptian monuments from thousands of years ago, and they have these big things honoring their little cats, and I think that's so cool. And I love my cat. She's precious creature, and we were talking about that yesterday here at home, about how it's so curious that cats don't really get along well with other pets. Like, it's hard to have a cat and a fish, or a cat and a bird, or a cat and a dog. I mean, you can, but it has to be arranged in a very careful way. Whereas, like, most other pets kind of get along, but cats, they really just want to be your only pet. They get very attached to us, but simultaneously they're so they can be like really standoffish or strange to us sometimes. But that just makes us love them more. I don't know what it is about cats. But I feel like there's something deeply human about loving a cat. And I've had cats in my life since I was a little kid, so it is definitely my favorite animal to have around. But I do like all animals, just that cats are special. Divine creatures is what I would call cats. Divine companions, perhaps. Marius with the super chat. Thank you, Marius, who says, this project is super awesome and inspiring. Thank you for the answer and your work on SerenityOS. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate that. That is kick-ass. Wow, there's so many super chats today. That is... I can't say... I can't thank people enough for all the support that I get, like these super chats and all the donations and everything. It just... Every time that somebody sends me something, I always just have to stop and think about what fortune I have to have people want to help me out in this way with some random thing that I decided to start doing. That's so nice. Thank you. Let's see. Outro 50 says, "Do you ever get tired of programming? Ever since I got a job in it, I haven't been in the mood for hobby projects." Mm. Well, I wouldn't say I get tired of it, but I get tired from programming. Like last week, I was tired. For anybody who was here for office hours last week, I just had to tap out 1 hour into it. I was so dead, and I think I did like five videos last week, and then I had a video every day almost. And I was so tired, and then I was sitting halfway through office hours just falling asleep, and I was definitely tired from programming at that point, but not tired of it. Every day I wake up and I'm excited to go program. I'm excited to just learn something or look into something, or try to improve something, see what we can achieve. It just gets me excited every day. And it wasn't always like that, but since I started exploring programming a lot more, especially in the SerenityOS project, just doing stuff for fun and not prioritizing by anything other than funny or fun and interesting. I find that it's just a constant, endless source of good vibes for me. So that has been really good. Dozian says, "Hey Andreas, I noticed when watching some of your older videos, the menu bar was on top. Any reason for the change to Windows approach or simply preference?" Mostly an aesthetic change. Also, it just didn't feel good to have the menu up top. It was like unpleasant to have to move the mouse between the windows and the top of the screen. And I also didn't like how the UI was sort of disjoint or disconnected. So you had like everything relevant to a program was in the window, and then you had to like look somewhere totally different for all the menus. And I originally just wanted to make it that way because in the 1990s or the late 90s, I was a Windows user, and I was always jealous of Mac users because I thought I'd never had a Mac, and I thought Mac computers were so interesting and cool, but because they were alien, and I just looked at them and I thought, oh, that's so cool, and I wanted to have that global menu bar. So when I started making Serenity, I just kind of revived that whole idea of, well, let's just get the menu bar up top for a Windows 2000-ish looking system. But over time, I just never really liked the way that it felt to use. I like the idea of it, but not the practical implementation, I guess. So that's why I switched it to in-window menus instead, which I feel are way nicer. Leorian says, having implemented a POSIX-based operating system, what would you change in POSIX for modern times and experience? I don't know that I would change anything in POSIX. I don't have anything against it. I mean, POSIX is a tiny, tiny layer of our operating system. It's just a, I don't know how large the layer is, but it's like less than 5% of the Serenity system. So it doesn't really hold us back or prevent us from doing anything that we want to do. So I don't think that it necessarily needs to be changed. But as long as you can extend it, right, which is trivial, you can add any kind of API you want outside of POSIX, and it's really extensible because the concept of file descriptors and stuff like that you can extend to use other types of things. But as a foundation, I think POSIX is perfectly fine, and I think a lot of people like to complain about POSIX, like people who don't make operating systems, but I don't see really the big problem with it. Revive Back says, don't you think C++ is bloated as hell? I like programming in C style, just using C++ for classes and a few other things. I think the C++ standard library is very bloated, full of things that I don't need or care about, but I think the C++ language is quite okay. I mean, it has features that I don't use for sure, but I don't think it's as bloated as some people insist. And in practice, the way that 99.9% of people, unless you are Jason Turner, the way that people use C++ is to just pick and choose the features that they like, and then they use those and they ignore all the rest. So, and that's what we do for Serenity as well. Like, we pick the features that are useful to us, that allow us to write better code, to have an easier, more productive time, and then we don't use features that get in the way of that. And I think it's the subset of C++ that we're using for Serenity is strictly better than C in every single way. Like, there is no drawback over C to the flavor of C++ that we're using, in my opinion, which is, of course, completely personal. Adrian says, have you ever contributed to any Linux project, desktop environment, or kernel? I've never contributed upstream patches to the Linux kernel. I've had many, many downstream patches. And I've done a lot of work on desktop environments, KDE specifically. I've done a ton of work on KDE back in the day, which I guess now was like 15 years ago. So quite a long time ago. But yeah, I did a lot of work on KDE 15 years ago. And New Beginning says, do you have plans for multi-threading? We already support multi-threading for at least 2.5 years. Let's see. Recha says, Andreas, do you have previous experience leading a project involving many people? Do you feel self-conscious about your current position and influence? I have no experience leading projects or people, and I don't know if I feel self-conscious about it. I try to remain introspective though, and look at my actions and my decisions and my demeanor and things like that. I try to look at it critically and think about what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, what I could do better, and so on. And but at the end of the day, I'm just a human learning this as I go. Just like I had to learn a lot of programming techniques to build this, I also had to learn a lot of people techniques. And it's definitely the case that I'm screwing up sometimes and over communicating or under communicating or like not phrasing things well. But I think there's room for mistakes in this, just as there's room for mistakes in programming, right? Like it's a continuous evolution, and as long as things keep getting better, I think it's good. But you know, if somebody sees me screwing up, then I hope they feel like they can tell me. I definitely don't want anybody to think that I'm screwing up and not tell me about it. And we've definitely had a lot of instances where people tell me that that maybe there's something I could have done better, and I appreciate that. Because I have a lot of learning to do. I mean, I'm just some guy figuring things out. So maybe I do feel a bit self-conscious actually upon reflection. Now that I say out loud what I think about it, maybe there's a sort of self-consciousness about it. But I think it's going okay. I think. Simon says, you seem to be using Vim and a GUI editor when coding in Ubuntu. Can you provide an overview when you code with what? I don't really think about it, I guess. If I need to make a quick edit on the command line, then I just bring up Vim usually because it's nice and handy. But if I want to spend a lot of time editing something, I would rather do it in CLion because CLion is pretty good. CLion is just a lot more productive than Vim for me. And so whenever I want to work on something for a longer time, I try to bring it into CLion. But for quick edits or like small files and stuff, I just bring it up in Vim, I guess. And I never really thought about formalizing the strategy, but I think that's it. Ayla Mao says, does Serenity support UEFI boot? No, not really. We haven't worked on UEFI stuff yet. Abhishek says, does your nephew follow the project as in trying out the operating system and messing around with different features or games? No, my nephew is 6 years old, 6.5. So he is not yet at the level of downloading and building SerenityOS, but I'm sure he will become curious about it sooner or later. I mean, I did put a SerenityOS logo on his laptop after all, so he's gonna start asking me about it, I'm sure. But right now he's just playing Minecraft and having a good time. David asks, do you keep a box where you personally can boot Serenity on bare metal? Sure, yeah, I have a couple of boxes like that, but I haven't booted them for a long time. Let's see, Bus says, hi Andreas, how far down do you think you can bring the load times of the Discord invite page in the foreseeable future? Will it ever meet or come closer to your host Firefox times, you think? Yeah, I think absolutely. We can bring it down to the same time, or within spitting distance, let's say. Maybe a second slower. Let's give ourselves some leeway, but I think there's a lot of dead time in the load. There's like a long window where we're just waiting for the data to come in, and I'm pretty sure that something is going wrong in our TCP stack. And we are, I know definitely we are sometimes getting stuck doing TCP retransmission, even though we don't actually need to. We just do it anyway for some reason, and I haven't debugged it yet. And I know we're like losing seconds to that during the load. And then if you got like the networking to be perfect, so it loaded as fast as it could there, you'd still have, I don't know, 3-4 seconds of CPU time spent in parsing CSS, parsing JavaScript, executing JavaScript, stuff like that. And those are all things that we can make faster, make lazier. Definitely strategies available. So I think it's doable, but it's going to take a lot of work. But I intend to do the work, or intend to support anybody who wants to do the work. You know, either which way is fine with me, if I do it or somebody else does it. But it's definitely doable. And one thing that we don't do at all at the moment is any kind of persistent disk caching. So whenever I reload, if I reload the page in Firefox, and I just use like Firefox here, right? Most likely it has a bunch of the resources already cached. And oh, now it opened my Discord over here. So that's faster because of that, and we could definitely implement disk caching as well, or we could compare against like cold cache reloads in Firefox. I don't know, but yeah, it should be doable. I've done enough work on WebKit and Safari load performance that I know you can always catch up with the competition. You just have to put effort. Let's see. PP Volto says, have you a separate repository for your own standard C++ library? No, the standard library we use in Serenity is right here, in ACK. Essentially. Jonathan says, hi Andreas, I'm curious why you decided to build your own browser instead of using Chromium or something like that. Because we build everything here. We're building the operating system, the desktop, the terminal, all the command line utilities, and the browser, and the image editor, and everything. We build everything ourselves. So it doesn't make any sense to me to make everything, but then suddenly get lazy and import a third-party browser when we can just build one ourselves there as well and have all the fun of doing that. Joropo says, in my opinion, the lack of restrict do is a drawback versus C. I think that's a very, very, very tiny drawback, but sure. Zulo says, is there a programming language made specifically for SerenityOS? If not, do you think making one would be worth it? There is no general purpose programming language made specifically for SerenityOS, and at the moment, I don't see the need for one. Alexander says, how would you feel about a SerenityOS developer conference? I guess I feel like that would be fun. I guess. And I'm sure we'll do one someday. Soul S says, coding such a big project takes a lot of commitment and dedication. How do you stay committed and not get sidetracked? So there are a bunch of different strategies at play, but the main thing for me is that the project is so wide that even if I get sidetracked, I still get sidetracked somewhere within the project. And that's really the whole magic trick that I'm using. If I'm working on the browser for 2 weeks in a row, and then I just want to do something else, there's something else I can do in Serenity, right? So all of my sidetracks get caught in the Serenity net. So that's how I stay within the project, I think. But also, importantly, I knew from the beginning that this was going to take a very long time. So I made my peace with that right at the start, that like this is going to take more than 10 years to become great. And I'm okay with that. I got time. And if somebody wants to join in, I'll tell them how I feel about it, and they can make their own decisions about that. But I'm in it for the long haul, so that helps a lot with staying committed, I think. It's a bit like marriage, I suppose. When you marry somebody, you say that you're gonna stay together forever, and just the act of making that promise makes it a reality that you're gonna do it. Like you're committing to something, and I feel like I'm very committed to this in the same way. Let's see, what is the ratio of Serenity test? Is that, I always have to look this up. Is this Igor? I gotta learn this at some point. Igor, yeah, Igor, sorry. Says, what is the ratio of Serenity tests? I don't know how to calculate that. Does current number of tests are enough for protecting of breaking when new features are developed? No, definitely not. There's always room for more tests, and things break all the time, and then we fix them. And we add more tests, and life continues. But there's always time for more tests. There's always room for more tests, and it's just it's sort of organic evolution happening. Let's see, anti-nuclear activists are pro-climate change says, is there something where you will go, I'm not doing that? Yes, telemetry. I'm not doing telemetry, for example. I think that's such an unnecessary thing that a lot of people, especially companies, a lot of people make excuses and justifications for it, and I think you can do just fine without telemetry. It seems like something I would never want to do. Colin says, what is an example of something simple that a noob could contribute just to have the satisfaction of helping out with Serenity? Well, I think you can do just about anything. And the best way is just to look around the system, like build it, run it, and look around. And I'm sure that you will find something. I promise you that you will find something that you can improve. And whatever your skill level is, like whatever your experience level, you will eventually find something you can improve. And it's always better, I think it's always better for people to find something on their own than to be given a list of things. It's so much more satisfying to scratch your own itch than to scratch somebody else's. So I invite you to look for something, Colin, to look for something that doesn't seem right or seems like you could make it better, because you will find it. Mast says, what kind of tests are used? Unit tests and integration tests? Yeah, so we have both unit tests and more macro tests. Like, we have unit tests for individual data structures, but we also run stuff like complete JavaScript test suite that exercises much more of the engine. And we have high-level tests and low-level tests, tests that do integration testing on kernel subsystems and things like that. And there's always room for more tests, and there's a lot of existing tests that you can look at if you want inspiration for how to write more tests. In general, like with any project, there's not as many tests as we should have, but there's tests, and we keep making more tests, so I think we're doing okay. Pablo says, what is the picture you use as the thumbnail in your videos? For some reason, it reminds me of being really frustrated as a kid. That's a picture of me being frustrated as a kid. It's a picture of me programming on one of my parents' computers as a child. I think maybe I was 10 years old in the picture or something like that. And just working on debugging something, maybe in Visual Basic, based on the fact that I'm holding a mouse. And yeah, that's how I remember that part of childhood. Just always sitting at the table with somebody's computer, and I had no idea what was going on around me. Like, the world was happening, life was happening, and I was just sitting like this. So the reason I use that is because it's, I guess, one of my favorite pictures of myself. Because when I started the SerenityOS project, this is sort of what I wanted to get back to, because this is the child I grew up being, and then I got distracted in my teenage years by, you know, alcohol, drugs, girls, all those kind of things that distract young men, and I wanted to go back to being that kid at the computer. And I think I succeeded, because now I'm living that way again. So that's pretty good. And now it's 6 o'clock, so it's time to wrap it up. So I want to thank everybody for coming to this week's office hours. Really appreciate all the company, all the excellent questions and chatter. And thank you so much for the super chat, everybody who sent those. I really appreciate that. And just in general, just having a good time here. I really appreciate that you came, I guess. And as I like to say, if you end up working on SerenityOS this weekend, I hope that you come to chat with us on the Discord server and tell us what you're working on, because that's what we like to do in the weekend, is we talk to each other about what we're hacking on. And I'm definitely going to go and do that later today. So until next time, I guess, have a great weekend and see ya.